The Panthers had their second joint practice of the preseason, this time in Houston. How did they look? We'll talk to somebody who was there right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, because starting on Wednesday, September 3rd, heading into the week one matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars, the weekly Wednesday mailbag is back every single week throughout the regular season and fingers crossed throughout the playoffs here on Locked On Panthers. But in the meantime, you can at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council, or hit me up on Blue Sky at Julian Council as well with any thoughts you have on Saturday's game and anything pertaining to your Carolina Panthers. This episode, Locked On Panthers, is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Back here on the show, and you can see I am sitting in a hotel room currently in Glen Allen, Virginia, just north of Richmond, here for my NASCAR duties, covering the race at Richmond Raceway this weekend. So I, of course, am not in Houston, and I'm off on the road, and I will have coverage for y'all for Saturday's preseason game. So could not be down there, but I do have somebody on the show today who was down in Houston on Thursday to check out joint practice between the Panthers and the Texans. Mike Kaye of the Charlotte Observer was nice enough to actually book himself on the show to talk about what went on in Houston on Thursday. So let's go ahead and talk to Mike about what he saw between the Panthers and Texans. Mike Kaye from the Charlotte Observer joining me again here on Locked On Panthers. Again, subscribe to your local paper and follow him over on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Mike_E_KAYE. Mike, how you doing, man?
You nailed it. I'm doing well. I am sitting in psychopath level air conditioning because I just can't handle the heat of Houston, and it's like 65 degrees in here for a reason, because I'm trying to maintain. I run warm to begin with, so. But you didn't ask me about the weather. I'm doing okay. I mean, we're here for joint practices. We're also covering the preseason game and trying to learn what we can before Steelers week, which will obviously be the creme de la creme of preseason entertainment. So,
yeah, looking forward to it. But Mike's in a hotel in Houston right now. I'm in a hotel in technically Glen Allen, Virginia, north of Richmond, as I have my NASCAR duties at Richmond Raceway. Tune into the Motor Racing Network, by the way.
Let's go
this weekend. We're the wonders of technology that we can sit here and do a podcast from two very different states and climates that are also, it's hot here too. So let's get into what you saw on a muggy, thick Thursday morning there in Houston, as the Panthers had their only day of joint practice with the Houston Texans ahead of the game on Saturday. One thing offensively that stood out to you, one thing defensively that stood out to you from Thursday morning.
Bryce Young is willing to take chances that he knows that he's got more than a 50% chance of being successful on. Actually, frankly, he had two picks yesterday in joint practices, one in the red zone, one up the seam. But other than that, I mean, he was dealing. They are really encouraged by what they see from him right now. I'm just telling you, internally, they feel really good about where he's at. He made an anticipation throw early in 11-on-11s. I'm sure it's blown up everywhere, whether it's my video or other people's videos. There's a bunch of them from every different angle. One even included Dan Morgan, kind of like, he threw an anticipation throw in the midst of like Xavier Leggette doing a double move and scoring a touchdown to the end zone. I mean, like, well, yeah, that's how you score touchdowns. Sorry. It was just like a really well-placed ball. Like,
right.
And Legette's timing on it was terrific. He had another crossing route throw to T-Mac, who was like wide open against Derek Stingley, who took it to the house. I mean, Stingley probably like pulled up and wasn't going to run that whole way in practice, which I don't blame him. It was hot. But there was one play in particular that didn't get caught on camera that I actually thought was his most promising. He trusted his line when the line was being pushed back into him pretty solidly into the pocket. And then Austin Corbett, who's got kind of a unique way of anchoring, like you just notice that he's anchoring most O linemen. You just got to watch film for that. But he like just shut down a defensive tackle like in the midst of a pretty powerful rush, and you could kind of see the friction of it. And that allowed Bryce to kind of step up, throw off platform down the seam to tight end James Mitchell. It was like a really impressive throw. It showed confidence, it showed poise, it showed accuracy, it showed an ability to improvise, because there's no way James Mitchell was the first read on that play. So look, I think they feel really encouraged about him. I feel really encouraged by him. I mean, I thought last year was fine. He had a fine training camp. He had 2 pretty standout practices. This year he's had 3. But for the most part, he's been consistent, and I think that's what you want. And then...
Well, yeah, I'll stop you there because it feels like the short of it all is he's showing confidence. He's willing to cut it loose. They're willing to allow him to cut it loose, which certainly did not feel like the case for a large portion of last season, even before the benching and when he came back in. And I think it was a big part of him being able to turn things around as they let him just, be Bryce, for lack of a better term. So that seems to have played out at least on Thursday. And I agree with you. I don't feel like he's ever been just crazy good in these training camps. It's just been way more steady, and I don't feel like the balls hit the ground nearly as much as it did last year. But you don't really know until you get out there when the games really get going, and we'll see how that goes week 1 against Jacksonville. Of course, we'll see more of that on Saturday against Houston. But defensively, what stood out to you from what you saw from that Panthers unit yesterday?
So, as you know, with joint practices, it's kind of hard to gauge both fields. But when I was over there, I thought the run defense looked pretty good. I mean, I was only over there for probably about a dozen plays, but I thought they looked good. I know a lot of people are making a big deal over coverage sacks as opposed to earned sacks. Patrick Jones, I thought, had a pretty consistent rush, at least when I was over there for those dozen plays. I'm not trying to say I was there for the whole practice, but I mean, look, I think the Mike Jack interception that's making the rounds, I think he's had a really strong camp. I think you're hearing a lot about Lathan Ransom. He's had a pretty good camp. Look, I think defensively they're going to be a middling group at best. I think that's just always been the case, and I think that's better than giving up the most points in NFL history and giving up the most rushing yards since 1980. I think you don't go from – I don't think you go from 32 to, 8 in one offseason, no matter how many roster moves you make. And look, I think it's on Ejiro Evero to take advantage of having this upgraded talent because, there's clearly a spotlight on him.
Yeah, and I would have argued, I have argued over the last couple of years, you look at the talent, especially last year compared to what they had the year before. When they lost Brian Burns, they didn't replace him with another Brian Burns. Jadeveon Clowney did actually grade out pretty well, and you look at pass rush win rate, and you look at even run stop win rate, according to ESPN, and then PFF had some solid numbers. But let's not pretend that he had the impact Brian Burns would have had here last year, and that he was a complete and total replacement and upgrade from what they could have had in Burns. And then Frankie Louvu, you weren't going to replace that at all. And I thought the linebacker play, in large part due to injury, was far worse last year than it was the year prior when Louvu was around. And even they had Shaq Thompson missing time back then as well. So that certainly was an argument that I've made, that the talent level wasn't that great. But this year with Derek Brown back, there's not a lot of excuses when you add him, Bobby Brown to the fold, Turk Wharton, and you bring in someone like Trevon Barrick, who has that experience that you kind of got to get it done. And also it's the last year of his deal. So if he doesn't get it done, then they'll move on. But Dave Canales constantly said, for anyone who wanted to listen last year, he didn't feel like the scheme was the problem. So if it's not the scheme, then what's the issue? probably the players. So we'll see if the new guys who are in town can get things done. And yeah, if they do go from last to eighth, I guess Derek Brown must be Aaron Donald, because that's the only kind of guy I could think could have that kind of impact. And probably that's still not even close to being realistic. But yeah, like the run stopping, like I felt like I saw that last week against Cleveland as far as the ones. And like that's good to see that carryover, especially against the Texans offensive line that's rebuilt. And they're trying to figure out what exactly their chemistry is going to be heading into the season. But let's take a quick pause. Talk some injury situations, some roster stuff, and then I'll look ahead to a Saturday as Panthers and Texans kick off at noon in God's time, 1 o'clock local time. Coming up here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL. All right, back here on Locked On Panthers, Julian Council, joined by Mike Kaye of the Charlotte Observer, one of the venerable beat reporters. Check out him on your local paper. Subscribe. Check out his work. Scott Fowler's work, Alex Zeitlow's work. Check him out over on socials at Mike_E_KAYE. Injury-wise, yesterday, Jaycee Horn not out there. No surprise. I know he spoke to the media on Tuesday and was like, I'm fine. Just got to get the stitches out. Didn't know when that was going to be. Well, clearly wasn't on Thursday. He will not play on Saturday either, as Dave Canales alerted y'all yesterday. Trevin Wallace is not there for personal reasons, but apparently he is flying, expected to play on Saturday. So maybe we'll find out what those personal reasons were or not. Jalen Coker, illness. I would think it's going to be an indoor game, but it's August. There really doesn't seem to be any reason to throw him out there. We'll see what they decide to do. Chandler Zavala still working his way back from the patellar tendon. Could be next week, as Dave Canales told us earlier this week. Cam Jackson, undisclosed. Tommy Trimble still working his way back. The Cam Jackson one, that's interesting to me because that's a guy they drafted in the 5th round. And I know they have the unofficial depth chart, and some of it is real, some of it's not. Like Corey Thornton being a 4-teamer. That's not the case because, he started and he's probably going to start again on Saturday. And, hell, since day one of training camp, he's been in there with the ones whenever Jaycee or Mike Jackson has rotated out. But Cam Jackson, no, that one's real because I have never seen him with the first unit. Rarely, if ever, seen him with the second unit. He very clearly is somebody who seems to be kind of on the outs, or at least has not worked his way into a position where he'd feel comfortable on the roster. What's your read of that overall situation right now?
Remember how they treated Jaden Crumedy last year?
Yeah.
Where he was on IR that's where I could see Cam Jackson falling.
I was going to ask you that too, because I thought, is this going to be one of those red shirt seasons where, okay, this is a guy that we drafted, clearly not going to make the team. Let's go ahead and he's got an injury. Let's basically shelve him.
I've seen him flash at times during practice. I don't think he's been, a complete non-factor. But I do think, listen, when you're talking about potentially keeping 7 wide receivers or keeping, 10 offensive linemen or keeping 6 inside linebackers, the defensive line, especially in an odd front, is going to take the brunt of it. It's interesting. It depends on what they feel about Shai Tuttle. Shai Tuttle had his first actual moment of training camp yesterday where he combined with DJ Wonnum for a pretty emphatic run stop. I think it just kind of depends on where they're at. Do they like Crumedy? Do they Crumedy I've seen flash a little bit. I get mixed messaging with how they use him. But let's say they keep 5. Let's say they keep Derek Brown, Bobby Brown, Turk Wharton, Ashawn, and then
who's the 5th? That's my thing. Every time I think this out, okay, there's 4
Cam's
obvious
the
ones
5th to me, but maybe they're being patient with LeBrian Ray, who they've kept for the last 2 years and played a ton.
Do you think who's the 5th to you?
LeBrian Ray might be.
You think okay?
I mean, he's injured. They didn't put him on IR just to cut him off of it. So, I mean, clearly he's a favorite of the defensive line staff. He knows how to play. I mean, again, they've relied on him a lot, and he goes from being like their number 3 defensive lineman to being their 5th. I think that's a better outlook. He's also cheaper than Shy Tuttle. He costs around what Cam Jackson makes. So, I don't know. That's a really interesting point, and I didn't really even think about it being any sort of conflict till I saw Cam Jackson out there yesterday on the sideline. And I do think that there's something interesting there. If they want to be clever with their roster dynamics, I mean, they can give him an extra 2 or 3 months to just like kind of learn. So,
yeah. And like, I tell people, like, after you get past the 4th round, you're not guaranteed to make it. And even 4th rounders aren't necessarily guaranteed, but I think more often than not, like, you're going to keep a 4th rounder around. Where you get to that 5th round, it's like, okay, you got to start showing me something. And then 6th and then certainly 7th. Yeah, you definitely got to show out. And I'll be curious because, like, I look at just the depth there at defensive line. Like, they're in a better spot there in the interior because of the additions of Turk and of Bobby, and then getting Derek Brown back. I thought Ashawn Robinson, I mean, by default, but I thought he also played fairly well, which was obviously their best guy last season. And then, okay, if it's going to be Shy Tuttle, at least he's had experience. LeBron Ray has experience, and he has some young guys in Cromedy and Jackson. And just like, we'll see how it plays out. But right now, like, that 5th spot, potentially 6th spot, I don't really know. I guess your guess is good as mine. And hell, anyone listening and watching this, I guess their guess is as good as ours in a way too. The receiver spot, 7, like, is that just like kind of like we're that's settled? Or like if it's 6, it's like David Moore getting cut and then signing the next week? Is that just feel like where this is all headed? I know, like, I mean, Coker clearly is fine. McMillan, I would guess Renfro is probably going to be solid too, just based off what we have seen. It'd be nice to see him out there on Saturday, see if he can do something after missing about a week and a half of the hamstring. Like, Jimmy Horn seems to be the only guy who's kind of really fighting for it, and it kind of comes down to return game. I know Hunter Renfro is a part of the return game. Etienne's getting opportunities at that running back spot. Raheem Blackshear, he's still battling for a roster spot. Kind of your thoughts there on those roster numbers, and really, I guess, Jimmy Horn in particular, where he stands.
Well, I think that 7th wide receiver spot has to be looked at as like wide receiver or playmaker / special teams asset, right? Like, so he's competing with Jimmy Horn's competing with Raheem Blackshear, who's competing with David Moore, who's competing with Bryce and Tremaine. Like, I think if you keep 7 wide receivers, you're keeping 3 running backs, you're keeping 3 tight ends. So you alluded to it earlier. There is a mechanism that the Panthers could check out. They know David Moore is not going to be subject to waivers. They also know his loyalty to Dave Canales. If they said, hey, look, we're going to cut you, put you on the practice squad for a week, but we'll guarantee half your salary and bring you back week 2, I don't think he would balk at that, because week 1, if he's on the roster, his entire salary for the season becomes guaranteed. That said, though, you're in the 2nd year of your program, and do you really want to, like, he's a guy that everybody likes in the locker room, that he's supposed to be a leader, he's supposed to be this guy who is mentoring all these players. To cut him for a week and show, like, that side of the business to all of these very young players, you wonder, like, could that mess with chemistry? Could that mess with locker room dynamics? There is another door to look into. I mean, they have weaknesses at safety and linebacker, and you wonder if a contender really needs a wide receiver, especially a veteran. Like, do they go at it, and try to blow the Panthers away with a player and maybe a pick for somebody like Thielen? And this is all hypothetical. I'm not reporting this, but what I'm saying is like, you do wonder if a team across, like, the league is like, wow, they have an abundance of wide receiver talent. Maybe they'd be willing to part with a guy. We really need a slot receiver, or
okay, that's interesting, because, like, I mean, I've had that conversation. I've had people ask, like, would Thielen would he be the obvious candidate? Like, the Renfro thing, I get it's a business, and, like, this kind of thing, like you talk about with David Moore, if they do the whole, like, we want you, but we don't want to lose Jimmy Horn because he's subject to waivers. Like, we're going to cut you, bring you back, because it's not like he's expendable, but, like, they know they can get him back. Where, like, that shows them the kind of dark side of the business, like, hell, I mean, Renfrow came out and said, like, he didn't want to play football. And Dabo convinced him to play. He didn't want to play anywhere other than back home. And to trade the guy is just like, Jesus Christ. But, like, that, it's a business. So, like, is Thielen really the only logical choice? I mean, people would probably have pitchforks and be picketing outside the stadium if they traded Coker.
Well, think about it this way. If you feel comfortable with Coker in the slot and Renfrow in the slot, and you feel good about Coker playing outside at Z and Xavier Leggette playing outside at Z, or you feel really comfortable with McMillan playing X and David Moore playing X, are you going, like, is Adam Thielen going to be happy with, 30 targets and 350 yards? Like,
yeah.
But so, like, I
just don't feel like, I mean, they didn't give him more money to play a reduced role. That's my thought.
Right. I mean, I think they were trying to do right by him. They're trying to build up the the culture stuff. But I wouldn't trust Hunter Renfrow to be like, okay, yeah, we're going to cut you. And then suddenly, like, 5 teams offer him more money or what, you know what I mean? You don't want to get into that sort of thing, especially with his story and all this other stuff and his Pro Bowl background. I think David Moore is really the only guy you could do that with and get away with it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll see. Like, we saw the Eagles trade for Jahan Dotson kind of out of nowhere in the middle of the season, and they gave the Washington within the division a day 2 pick. So, like, that's the type of stuff where you're like, okay, if somebody really needs a slot receiver who they know is dependable, who they know is productive, I mean, that could be interesting. Again, it's all speculation, but, like, they really need improved inside linebacker and safety depth. The issue is with this defense, those positions are not priority positions in this defense. They're not priority positions in most defenses. Unless you have a top 10 player, like, you look at guys like Luke Kuechly and Brian Dawkins and Ed Reed as, like, Hall of Fame talent. They made those positions priority. Typically, teams are not like, yeah, we've got to invest a ton of money in inside linebacker and safety. They have the number one, they have the highest offensive line payroll in the league this year. They have the second highest defensive line payroll in the league this year. And so you're going to take your lumps at some positions. They're taking lumps at tight ends, a very cheap position for them right now. Safety, inside linebacker, kicker. Like, you're going to take lumps. And so I think that's kind of where they're at, unless they get creative.
Yeah. Offensive line, Cade Mays loses that battle. I don't think that's like a huge surprise, but with the injury to Damian Lewis and not quite sure what his status will be for week 1, and I'm sure we'll probably get an update here over the next couple of days from Dave Canales there. Cade Mays fell in at left guard over the last 2 practices, which makes sense. I mean, if this is the guy that you felt like was good enough to potentially be your center, that the competition was close, in Dave Canales' words, why not get him out there and protect Bryce and, in the whole, hey, Ja'Tyre Carter, here's your opportunity to show us something. Let's get Cade in there to be a cohesive unit with those guys. Kind of how do you see, like, that playing out roster number wise? I mean, I know you had mentioned potentially 10 very clearly. The starting 5, including Damian Lewis when he's healthy, Brady Christensen, Josh Nijman, and Cade Mays. That's 8. I'm guessing Chandler Zavala if he's healthy enough. And then 10th guy, Jarrett Kingston, Ja'Tyre Carter. What do you think?
The reason why I think they keep 10 is you're going to keep 8 active on game days, or 7 active, one of the two. If you keep 7 active and Cade Mays is in your starting lineup, Brady Christensen and Josh Nijman are probably your 2 guys. If you keep 8, it's those 2 guys and then a backup guard. Now, Chandler Zavala is dealing with an injury, but he might not be out for, you probably don't want to put him on ice for 4 weeks. Same with, Damian Lewis. So you need to be able to have at least 8 linemen ready to go week 1. I don't think they'll stay at that number, but I think, there's logic there. I've gotten asked why Brady Christensen, who started like 18 games at left guard between 2022 and 2023, isn't the immediate fill-in. I think his best strength and his best value to this team is being a 6th man on game day. So, like, most offensive line coaches don't want to switch up 2 positions in the middle of a game. So, like, if, let's say, Brady starts at left guard and then Icky goes down and they think that Brady's a better left tackle than Nijman, then they're moving him to left tackle and they have to bring in Cade Mays at left guard. So they're switching two positions for the benefit of one. And I think most teams don't want to do that. So you go with a guy like Cade Mays who has starting experience, understands the center position as well as the guy next to him probably, and you go from there. But I think they feel like they have a decent guard depth chart. Like they like Carter more than probably most people on the outside. I mean, he's a practice squad holdover. I think they keep him because he knows the blocking scheme. But I think they have probably 11 rosterable offensive linemen, maybe 12. I've heard good feedback about the undrafted rookie class too. So like it's one of those things where it's like they're going to cut players that they think are worthy of a 53-man roster. I honestly think this is the first year since I've been here that they are going to cut probably 5 to 7 players that you could make an argument should be on the 53 or could be on a 53 in the NFL.
Wow. And for people to also recognize this, you got the practice squad. So it's like really 69 guys you're going to be able to utilize, and then that'll be fluid throughout the season. Can I hold you for just one more question I want to ask you? Sure. I want to take a break here. Okay. Let's take a quick pause, come back, and we'll just kind of talk about some things to look for on Saturday in preseason game number 2. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and Locked On NFL are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now is the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, Mike, you're down there in God's country or God's time zone. Central time zone always will be the most elite time zone. I don't know about Houston being God's country. To somebody, I'm sure it is. But Central time is undefeated. Miss living in that, but also Eastern time, whatever. Looking at the game on Saturday. So no Jaycee Horn. Would you expect Derek Brown out there this week, or are they going to hold him?
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, maybe a drive or two. I don't like getting into like the dynamics of that because it's all about risk versus reward, and so it's about coaching paranoia and front office paranoia, and it's like either play them or don't. Like I there's no reason to be strategic about the preseason. I'm sorry, like I find it utterly ridiculous, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody who's up on that podium, but like, come on, guys. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, I mean, like last just say year, you're not playing them. It's fine. Like, nobody's going to have first off, it's an away preseason game. You're not trying to draw, Panthers fans. It's like the sickos are going to watch anyway. The people that are kind of about it are going to watch the first quarter anyway. And then, the people that don't care until the regular season are not going to watch it. So, like, what are we doing here? And so, listen, they talked about 3 series for the starters. I think that's fine. If they put up 10 points on their first 2 drives, sit them down. Who cares? Like, I mean,
they're done.
Yeah, if you have 2 successful drives, it's fine. And if they have a 2 3 and outs, play them in a third series. That gives you the wiggle room. If they have 1 really strong series and 2 kind of series, whatever, sit them down. Here's the thing: when you have a talented roster, as much as you want to get the starters ready, you want to get as much information about the players immediately behind them as you possibly can. Like, I find it funny that I think center was kind of out of necessity because of the Damian Lewis injury and the Chandler Zavala injury to call that when you've called it. I mean, it was evident to anybody in practice for like the last week before they did it. Like the Browns during practice, I was like, this job, it's over. Yeah. But like you see how they're talking about kicker. That's actually like the mature way of handling a competition, especially when it's between 2 or 3 players. And listen, like we talked about that wide receiver 7 / running back 4 or tight end 4. I personally would not keep 7 wide receivers because one of those guys is going to be inactive. And you don't want to have 7 active wide receivers. Like, that's going to hurt your special teams outside of maybe a returner. And I think Hunter Renfrow is probably going to be the punt returner. If he proves to be healthy and recover from his hamstring injury, I think that's where you put him because that's what gives him his tangible value outside of just being like the backup slot receiver or the number 1 slot receiver. Jalen Coker needs to play, period. Xavier Leggette needs to play. T-Mac, you might have heard of him, needs to play. Like, those young guys need to play. If you want to be a sustainable winner, those guys need to play. And so, like, that's where I think that Thielen kind of – it's interesting. I'm interested to see how they play him in the preseason.
Yeah, I mean, because the Thielen thing – because here's the thing. Like, the receiving core is talented, yes, but it is not experienced. Because, like, that's the thing. Like, Leggette, we know he had the injury situation last year. You want to see more from him this year. I think that the Panthers will. McMillan obviously has never played a game in the NFL. Coker, really impressive. We know the circumstances of him making the roster, being gone, why he was able to get out there with Thielen's injury, trading with Deontay Johnson. Doesn't really matter. The guy went out there, made some plays, and has continued to make plays. It's just one of those things where, like, you're still in an evaluation period with your quarterback. It's a risk in a way, but maybe it's the best thing. But, like, it certainly is risky to put a talented but yet largely unproven wide receiver core around Bryce going into the season if they do move on from Adam Thielen. But also, it's like Adam Thielen is going to be 35 this year. You should want your younger guys to be beating out your 35-year-old wide receiver. Like, so it's kind of like I see both sides of it to where it's like maybe he should be the odd man out, but it's also like he has value and who knows how the season plays out. Because we have 8 weeks for them to make a decision on whether, do they want to move on from somebody as far as a trade?
I wouldn't trade Thielen until the trade deadline. I think Thielen is way too valuable. But if you value Hunter Renfrow and David Moore's experience, which is part of the reason why you're keeping them and their leadership ability, then like it does kind of say, like, are you like tripling up on veteran know-how and veteran whatever? Like, I covered the Jaguars for 3 years. Their top 3 receivers were a former undrafted free agent, Allen Hurns, on his rookie contract, Marquise Lee, who was constantly injured, a second-round pick, and Allen Robinson, a second-round pick. Oh, and they surrounded a quarterback who was on his rookie contract for the majority of the time in Blake Bortles. You don't necessarily need that guy, but they also had Mercedes Lewis, who was a veteran presence, who kept everybody together. They had a young offensive line, but, you know, they brought in guys who were older. I just think, like, there's no perfect formula. If somebody offers you a 3rd-round pick for Adam Thielen, you take it. But, I mean, beyond – maybe even a 4th. But beyond that, like, first off, Thielen doesn't need to be spending his last season in the league, you know, on a middling team. But I also truly believe that he believes in Bryce and that he believes in what they're trying to accomplish here. And I think he has been a very good person for the community. He's been a very good person for the locker room, the franchise. It's a tough call. Like, I mean, Dan Morgan's going to have to make a tough call here.
Yeah, and like that's why he literally gets paid millions of dollars to put together this roster. So we'll see how it plays out. Very interesting. And that's been the most intriguing unit to me since the offseason, really, and then going into camp. And it's still played out that way, just trying to figure out what the roles will be and who may be here, who may not be here, and when that may come. So appreciate you, Mike, as always. Again, y'all follow him over on social at Mike_E_KAYE. Subscribe to your local paper, the Charlotte Observer. See right now, $1.99 for your first 3 months. So get on that deal while you still can. And of course, check out his coverage from Saturday down there, boots on the ground in Houston for the Panthers' second preseason game against the Houston Texans. Mike, appreciate you as always.
Thanks, Jaycee.
Thanks to Mike Kaye of the Charlotte Observer for joining me here on Locked On Panthers, giving us a nice update on all that's going on in Houston as the Panthers had joint practice on Thursday with the Texans. And then tomorrow on Saturday, 1 o'clock Eastern time, noon Central, they'll be on the NFL Network for anyone who's not in the Charlotte area. But of course, at home, you'll be able to check it out on your local Panther station. They'll be there for week 2 of the preseason. The starters, again, expected to play about 3 series. If they do have success in the first 2 series, at least offensively, expect that those guys will not go out there for a third time. But Dave Canales did say following the game last week, he wanted to get them in for at least 3 series, and then also depending upon how things played out with joint practice. So we'll see how it plays out, but excited to see the Panthers go against a team in Houston that is the division favorite to win the AFC South for the 3rd year in a row. CJ Stroud and that offense rebuilding on the offensive line as Panthers defensive line in game perform against them. Will we see Derek Brown, the edge rushers from Houston? How do they go up against Taylor Moton against Ike Ekwonu? Some things I'll be looking out for on Saturday as the Panthers and the Texans meet down there in Houston. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, where starting on Wednesday, September 3rd, heading into week 1, the weekly Wednesday mailbag is back every single week throughout the regular season, and fingers crossed, knock on wood, throughout the playoffs as well here on Locked On Panthers. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And tomorrow on Saturday, I do have to work the race, but I do not have to be at the track until 4 o'clock, which the game starts at 1. So at halftime or early in the third quarter, around 2:30, 2:45, we're already going to have seen a lot of the starters. We're going to have seen all the starters at that point in time, and a good amount of snaps of the 2s. So at that point in time, around 2:30, 2:45, I'm going to go live on YouTube with my observations, my thoughts on the week 2 game between Carolina and Houston. Anything that I miss as far as Dave Canales, what he says after the game, we can discuss that next week on Monday or Tuesday, whenever that may be. But Saturday, live on YouTube around 2:30, 2:45 to give you my thoughts of how the starters performed and what I had seen from the 2s. Unfortunately, my hotel TV is right here. They don't have the NFL Network, which is like they have Big Ten Network, which I guess like we're not far from Maryland. So I guess so, but it's just Big Ten Network, but no NFL Network. But I have another laptop I can watch it on. So I'll give you all my thoughts on what happened with the starters and what I saw from the 2s around 2:30, 2:45 on Saturday here on YouTube before heading off to Richmond Raceway. Tune into Motor Racing Network, by the way. But that's it. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And again, I'll talk to y'all live right here on Saturday on Locked On Panthers.